Here we come to one of the most provocative and interesting theses of the Zohar, and it's something I've already hinted at really several times, because there's an idea of the creation of Elohim, the creation of God or the supernatural that as we perceive it in this universe, not the creation of the true creator, if you will, the Ein Sof, but the creation of the way in which we can interact with that true creator. It's an aspect, an emanation, it's attributes of that true creator who is so far beyond us. Something that we can, as puny little humans, can perceive and interact with. And so the Zohar says, with this beginning, the unknown concealed one created the palace. This palace is called Elohim, God. The secret is Bereshit bara Elohim. With beginning, blank, created God. Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. So it's saying, with this beginning, Bereshit, the beginning referred to in Genesis, it may be there. It is and it isn't. It may be. They're saying it is the first Bereshit that is referred to in Genesis, but not explained in that way in Genesis. So they're going behind what Bereshit actually means. So they're saying, with this Bereshit, the unknown concealed one, that's another name for the Ein Sof, another way of describing what we cannot know, what we cannot perceive. So the infinite created the palace. Well, what is the palace? Remember before we talked about ancient and medieval sources of Kabbalah, and one of those ancient sources was Hechalot literature and Merkava literature that seeks to describe the palaces and the throne, the chariot throne of the heavenlies. And so here it's saying the unknown concealed one, Ein Sof, which you can't even get a vision of, created the palace, the Hechalot, the palaces, and those things that people have had mystical visions of, essentially. So there's something supernatural now. It's still outside our perception, our normal world, but it's at least something that can be envisioned in our world, these palaces that others have also written about. And this palace is called Elohim, God. In other words, God, the supernatural, what occupies the heavenly realm. Supernatural beings, God himself. This is the topic of the Hechalot literature. And then it says, the secret is Bereshit bara Elohim. Well, that's just the three first words of Genesis that we looked at already. Why is that a secret? Well, they interpret it in a particular way. With beginning, or in beginning, Bereshit bara Elohim. So not God created, but something created God, something nameless, something that cannot be expressed. Created the idea, the manifestation, Elohim, God, or the supernatural, that we can have revealed to us in this world. So I have a note at the bottom. Many mainstream rabbis consider this interpretation heretical, and perhaps some still do, and probably many Christians and Muslims would see this as heretical. It may be a step too far for some of you in this course. I don't know. You're, of course, not obliged to accept any of this as absolute truth, but our goal is more to compare this to what the scriptures say and to see if they're compatible or not, or what's the sense, what's going on. And so for some of you, this may be too much, but for others, you may see the insight that the author here of the Zohar is trying to express, which is the idea that the understanding of Elohim, or God, or gods for that matter, Elohim can also be gods in the Hebrew Bible, the understanding of God or gods or the supernatural that we have, that in fact pales in comparison to the true truth, to what is beyond, which we can't even speak about. And we'll just call it the Ein Sof or something like that. So I actually do appreciate this insight. I think it's a very interesting and important insight. Again, I don't take it in a dogmatic sense, I don't interpret it beyond what this, the way I've already expressed, which is this hint at what is more than what we can conceive of as God. So you can make of that as you will. And it is a paradox. We can see different sides of it, knowing and not knowing. So in Jeremiah we read, "Let the wise man not boast of his wisdom, let the rich man not boast of his riches, but in this may he who boasts boast, understanding and knowing me, for I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh." Now it seems to be a pretty straightforward statement that it is possible to know this Creator. And we are told in many places in the Hebrew Bible about knowing the Creator, knowing Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, and we're instructed to seek to know and to love Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So it seems to be quite straightforward, although of course at the same time it's a big challenge to say who can really boast of this, who can really say that they know the Creator and they understand the Creator. So even in that one verse is a paradox, because it's saying, if you want to boast, boast about this, that you know me and understand me, because you're invited to know and understand me. But at the same time, who can really boast about that? And then if we go to Psalm 139, we see in a somewhat similar context, talking about Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the Creator, and what's known about the Creator and the creation. And the psalmist says, "Such knowledge is too wondrous for me. High above, I cannot attain it." So there's again this idea of, well, we can't quite know it. We can't quite perceive it. Again, if we look at Isaiah, we see verses that speak of the limits of human understandings. And this is again Alter's translation, slightly modified. You may be used to a somewhat different version, but it's basically the same sense. "For my devisings are not your devisings, and your ways are not my ways, says Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. For as the heavens are high over earth, so my ways are high over your ways, and my devisings over your devisings." So the way that we think is like the earth, the way that God thinks is like the heavens, very far above us. Very hard for us to attain to that. We cannot attain to it completely. And that's in the Hebrew Bible. So that's a kind of mystical idea that's already in the Hebrew Bible, and the Kabbalists take it and they push it much, much further perhaps, but it's that same idea, I think, that is implicit already in these types of passages. Now, how far are they going to go? And we'll end with this for lecture 1. How far are the Kabbalists willing to go in pushing this? Well, I alluded to it earlier. One of their ideas is God as nothingness, or expressing the idea of God as nothingness. Here's a quotation from the Encyclopedia Judaica. It says, "More daring in Lurianic Kabbalah," remember I talked about Isaac Luria, the Ari. So more daring in Lurianic Kabbalah is the concept of the first step in the manifestation of Ein Sof as Ain or Afisa, nothing or nothingness. Essentially, this nothingness is the barrier confronting the human intellectual faculty when it reaches the limits of its capacity. Here is a realm which no created being can intellectually comprehend, and which therefore can only be defined as nothingness. Ein Sof, which turns toward creation, manifests itself therefore as Ein Hagamur, complete nothingness. Now this is obviously a paradox, because it's saying that the infinite, everything, which is everything that could really be, manifests itself as complete nothingness, as nothing. So it's just the total paradox being expressed, just like we saw a spark of total darkness. So what is this? How can darkness shine? How can it spark? How can everything be nothing? Again, it's this mystical language that I think one has to be if one wants to understand what the intention is behind this, there's a certain flexibility and openness that's required. One has to be ready to think in a different way and to appreciate a different form of expression. Not everyone is. It's not for everyone, perhaps, but for those who are open to thinking in that way, it can provide some insights. So what does it mean that the first step in the manifestation of Ein Sof is Ayin or Afisa, nothing, nothingness? Well, remember we talked about that as the first stage of creation in the Kabbalistic understanding. It's the revelation of the Ein Sof. It's not yet the creation of the actual universe. And so what this quotation is telling us is that the Ein Sof, which we can't say anything about, even when it starts to reveal itself, the first extent of its revelation to us appears as nothingness, because we as humans are simply not capable of reaching Ein Sof. By definition, that's what they've been saying from the beginning. So there's a barrier there. The human mind, the human being, cannot surpass this barrier. It cannot get to the Ein Sof. So even when the Ein Sof turns toward creation, as it says in this quotation mark, Ein Sof, which turns toward creation, like starts to allow an emanation, a revelation, the first, or the ultimate, from our perspective, the ultimate point there before getting to the Ein Sof is just total, complete nothingness. We can't get beyond that. So for us, it's like absolutely nothing. No created being can intellectually comprehend this. That's what it's saying. So therefore, they call it nothingness, because for us, we simply cannot say anything about it. And that's not even the Ein Sof, that's before you get to the Ein Sof. Remember, they talk about the concealed within the concealed. So this will be a concept in Kabbalistic thought, Ayin HaGamor, the complete nothingness, that we can't move beyond. So I hope these are a few interesting paradoxes with which to begin our course.
What Bible do you read? And how do you know it's the right one? There's only one version of the Bible, right? It might surprise you to learn that Bible translations led to many versions of Holy Scripture. Long ago, translators interpreted the Hebrew Bible, ensuring it would be enjoyed in many languages. But when they encountered Hebrew words they didn't understand, translators relied on their individual cultural context and used different words with different meanings unrelated to the original ones. This led to Bible versions that lacked the full, beautiful, original explanations becoming part of our history. That's why when you join our online classes, you'll get back to the source of the original Hebrew Bible to uncover hidden meanings.
Get back to the source. Join our online course today, where the treasures of the authentic Bible await you.
Click on the link and register to start your biblical experience.